About 486,000 people in the US currently live full-time in RVs. The number is equivalent to the entire city of Long Beach, California, which has just simultaneously abandoned its roof to reside in a family car. Don't misunderstand whether this is a trend or a free lifestyle like social networks once painted. In essence, it is the forced or frankly exiled choice of those who no longer have the strength to shoulder the mounting rents, bills, and debts. The highways now turn into makeshift residential areas. Walmart parking lots, Nevada deserts, or abandoned lots become the new address of what was once called the American middle class. They used to have jobs, have houses, have retirement dreams, until inflation, credit card debt, and rent simultaneously exceeded their tolerance limits. Each RV is now an iron coffin of the American dream. Inside are fathers who used to work as engineers, mothers who used to be nurses, elderly couples who carry a lifetime memory, but no longer have a place to return to. In today's video, we'll learn why hundreds of thousands of Americans are being pushed off their own roofs, and how the housing, financial system is strangling the middle class, who were once the epitome of the American dream. In a country where the dream was once measured by the size of the house, now, with nearly 500,000 Americans, it is only as big as the length of an RV. A new symbol of free is built from old steel, worn tires, and insecurity like a cramped birdcage. These numbers don't come from a movement or lifestyle of young nomadic professionals who work remotely, travel around the country, documenting their truck lives on social media. Nor is it a more traditional image of retirees crossing national parks on a list of things they want to do in a $100,000 coach with the freedom of retirement savings. Healthy. Rather, it's the experience of low-income Americans who work as childcare or home health aides or live off Social Security benefits, with nowhere else to go in the housing market that increasingly caters to the wealthiest strata of society. The RVs lined up in silence. Inside were people who had stable jobs, paid taxes, and believed that they would have a comfortable rest after a lifetime of work. Now I have to bathe in the river, buy Walmart bread to eat all week, and use the trash to go to the bathroom. In just 3 years, the number of people living in cars increased by more than 23%, according to estimates by Urban Institute. At the same time, rent increased by 25%, average house prices exceeded $400,000, and inflation corroded all savings. Middle-class savings. The so-called dream of home ownership in America was once a symbol of success, is now a privilege that many people can never reach again. They don't leave home for adventure. They left because they could no longer afford to stay. Retiree woman who used to live in Santa Cruz said, "No one chooses to give up the house to live in a stalled RV, but this is better than being homeless outdoors." Another man who has been a factory employee for 30 years said briefly, "I'm still working. It's just that now that work is over, instead of returning to a cozy roof, I return to a parking lot to sleep. That's the American dream I received." Entering the RV is now not the beginning of the journey of discovery, but the end of a steady series of days. For a few, this life helps them temporarily release their finances, gather some savings, or pay off debt. But for the majority, it drags them into a new spiral of debt and hidden costs. The situation seems to add fuel to the fire, as RV parks that used to rent out cheap long-term rentals have switched to serving short-term visitors. Rent prices doubled. Many places demanded $100-200 a month, causing the poor, the elderly, and even veterans to be pushed out of the last house on wheels. Some tried to set up RVs on the edge of the city, where the law was not yet strict, but that was only a temporary solution before the police knocked on the door. The downturn in the labor market has made it increasingly difficult for many families to make ends meet. Unemployment claims this month soared to their highest level in nearly 4 years. At the same time, prices continue to rise, driven by rising costs of living such as food, gasoline, and electricity. American dream, once painted with white fences and flower gardens on the front porch, now collapses in steel frames and noisy engines. It's no longer a dream of rising, but a dream of keeping yourself from falling to the bottom. Is American Dream 3.0 no longer about owning, but just the ability to survive tomorrow? Perhaps for many people, success is now simply keeping the wheel spinning for another night. But if an entire generation that has built this country has to call the car house, then perhaps it is America that is lost. No one thought that one day freedom of movement would become a new form of debt, with the very wheels that need to be refueled every day to continue rolling. The majority of people living in RVs are not vagrants, but middle-class workers who are eroded by the cost of living. They are veterans, pensioners, single parents, or people who work in home healthcare. Jobs that feed others but are not enough to feed themselves. With 15 million people over 65, the average pension is only about $1,970 a month, while rent exceeds that level. Many people are forced to get off their old car, the only place they can also call house. According to KUTV, 43% of single-parent families now spend more than half of their income just to keep their roof. And as rents increase, RVs become the last option. An Oregon woman said she used to rent a house for $1,800 a month, but when the landlord increased it by $400, she had no choice but to move the whole family into the old van. She still works full-time, still pays taxes, but her entire salary is sometimes not enough to pay RV park fees, buy gas, and change oil. The hidden costs behind this minimalist life pile up every day. A stable parking space costs $900 a month, not including gas, propane, insurance, and repairs. One power system failure can cost $3,000, nearly half a year's pension. Many people say they feel like they're stuck in a desperate circle when they exit the bank, but are dependent on gas pumps and bills. Ironically, many of them are still counted as in employment. They serve in stores, drive delivery cars, or babysit during the day. But when night falls, they park on the edge of the city, turning off the lights early to save energy. Freedom, the word that once made Americans proud, now sounds like a sad irony. Because in reality, that freedom has to be bought with every gallon of gas, and not everyone has enough money to fill the tank. Former middle-class people now live in a makeshift economy where survival replaces stability and dreams is paid in installments with fuel vapor. Does freedom still have meaning when it has to be fed by debt? And if the wheel is the new foundation of the American dream, then perhaps that wheel is slipping in a financial nightmare. In America, where everything has a law, even sleeping in your own car can be illegal. As the number of people living in RVs increases rapidly, many cities are starting to respond by issuing bans on overnight parking, cleaning parking lots, or towing vehicles they call urban obstructions. And so, with thousands of people living in the car, a legal stop suddenly became a rare privilege. In Los Angeles, more than 10,000 people are estimated to be living in their vehicles. But the city only has a few hundred legal parking positions under the Safe Parking program, which is often full, forcing thousands of people to move continuously. Some elderly or sick people have to change positions every 24 hours just to avoid being fined or being towed in the middle of the night. A 72-year-old woman said that she always kept her alarm clock at 4 a.m., not to go to work, but to drive to another neighborhood before the police arrived. In Portland, the situation is similar. The city has passed a 24-hour maximum parking limit at the same location, leaving thousands of people with no choice but to become reluctant nomads. In California, in the past 2 years alone, more than 2,000 RVs have been towed or destroyed, many of which remain the sole home of their owners. These people don't commit crimes, they're just poor. But in the eyes of the law, poverty has become a misbehavior. People living in the car are fined for parked in the wrong, deported from the central area, or losing all their assets in just one morning, the only assets they still have. A former nurse living in an RV said that after being pulled, she not only lost her vehicle, but also lost her medicine, documents and family photos. The government calls those campaigns to maintain public order. But for those trying to survive, it's like a systematic pursuit. They don't seek privileges, just want to be allowed to sleep peacefully in their own car, without fear of knocking on the door in the middle of the night. A police officer in Los Angeles once said, "We don't want to do this, but the law is the law." That statement sounds reasonable until you understand that the rules here is protecting the empty parking lot, not the people sleeping on it. Perhaps this is the most naked paradox of modern America. Order is maintained, but humanity gradually disappears. Perhaps you don't know that, in America in 2025, freedom is no longer a right, but a trade-off. Hundreds of thousands of Americans are living full-time in RVs not to watch the sunrise in the Utah desert, but to avoid rent bills. But behind that shell of freedom is a cold truth. Every night is a gamble of survival. According to data compiled from local agencies in California and Arizona, tens of thousands of people are parking overnight on Walmart yards, public yards, or along highways. Those places have no electricity, no water, and most importantly, doesn't feel safe. According to a 2023 UCLA study, more than 40% of women living in vehicles have faced dangerous situations. 1 in 5 of them reported having been surprised while sleeping. Those numbers don't appear in the economic report, but they recount something else: the isolation, fear, and emotional trauma that people living in cars endure every day. Many people say they choose RV life to keep some freedom, but they themselves understand that it is forced freedom. The so-called mobile home becomes the grey area between home and homeless. You are not out of society, but you no longer belong to it. You still pay taxes, still work, but are not allowed to park anywhere for more than 24 hours. And in that contradiction, America is witnessing a new generation of reluctant nomads. Yet, among those dark parking lots, there were still small rays of light. Several major community organizations and brands, such as KOA, Campgrounds of America, and Good Sam, have begun expanding the safe parking model to low-income people, providing legal parking, clean water, and basic security. In California, some churches also allow people living in RVs to park overnight, with volunteers bringing hot meals and helping them fix their cars. They are small efforts, but bring the greatest feeling these people have lost: being seen as human. How long until free is just a game of chance, where every sleep can be your last time in peace? And if even the right to sleep in one's own car requires permission, is there anything else in America that is truly yours? When it comes to the collapse of the middle class, people often think of unemployment, gas prices, or rising house prices. But actually, there are invisible gears silently spinning behind an economic machine lubricated by inflation, debt, and greed. Since 2020, rents in the US have increased by more than 25%, while the average worker's salary has only inched up to about 4 to 5% per year. According to Urban Institute, the number of people living in transportation has increased 23% in just 3 years. It is not a romantic nomadic option, but a direct consequence of a housing market manipulated by speculation and cost of living is out of control. The average home price in the US currently exceeds $400,000, and with home loan interest rates around 7 to 8%, the dream of home ownership is now a luxury. Meanwhile, RV parks that were once low-income shelters are now also turning into short-term resorts. The rental price from $500 month in 2019 has now increased to $1,200 in urban areas. Poor people are pushed away, and their places are filled by tourists looking to experience wild America. Once again, profits win humanity. Meanwhile, basic survival costs also turn into burdens. Gas, insurance, and repairs skyrocket. One engine failure can cost $3,000 or 6 months of average pension. The system, which had been designed to protect the middle class, now left them in free fall. When they cannot borrow to buy a house, they rent. When they can't rent, they buy a used RV on credit. And when the car broke down, they borrowed again to fix it. A spiral of debt, sophisticated but with no way out. This machine operates smoothly as it is hidden by reasonable-sounding concepts: free market, GDP growth, real estate investment. But behind the charts and numbers, hundreds of thousands of Americans are choosing between filling up and filling up their stomachs. A generation that once believed that hard work was enough now realize that all their efforts were crushed by mechanisms they were never entitled to touch. His story is not unique. It is a mirror that reflects an economy that is accumulating wealth at the top of the pyramid, and the bottom must run endlessly to avoid being crushed. Several non-profits such as Habitat for Humanity and the National Alliance to End Homelessness have begun to speak out, calling on the federal government to expand affordable housing programs while also imposing heavier taxes on investors buy houses for short-term rentals. Still, these efforts are like adding fuel to an overheated machine when financial interests still dominate all decisions. If the system was created to protect the middle class, then why are they the ones who are being crushed between its gears? And when will America stop before this machine itself devours the soul of the American dream? Every morning on the edge of Tucson, before the sun could even get out of the desert, old RVs started, not to go anywhere far, just to move to a new parking lot before the police arrive. However, amid that harsh scene, there is still something quiet and surprising. They still call each other neighbors. On vacant lots or Walmart parking lots, a new community form is forming: the parking lot people. These are veterans, retired long-distance drivers, single mothers, or couples over 60 years old who have had homes, jobs, and retirement plans. Now, they share water bottles, charging cords, electrical outlets, and even old stories, pieces of memory of an America they once helped build. That statement summarizes the paradoxical reality of America today, as those left behind are recreating the community spirit that modern society has lost. According to reports from California and Nevada, thousands of RV clusters, small groups of 5 to 20, cars are springing up around the suburbs or close to the highway. They hold dinner together on weekends, help each other fix generators, watch out for each other when strangers are present. For those who have lived among the world of contracts, bills, and debt, what they find here is not comfort, but a little bit of residual humanity. A 58-year-old woman living in Oregon said that every morning she and a few friends in the parking lot started a fire to make coffee. "It's not Starbucks," she said, "but at least here, everyone remembers your name." A saying that seems simple, but reflects the emptiness of millions of Americans. A society where people were once attached by faith, now connected by hardship. According to Pew Research, nearly 60% of people living in cars said they feel is safer when living near people in the same situation. It's that sharing and empathy that helps them get through cold nights, unexpected knocking sounds, and gas bills that don't stop rising. Where there is no longer a white fence or a green turf, human love becomes the only fence against despair. Several non-profit organizations and travel brands such as Escapees RV Club or KOA, Campgrounds of America, are shifting their support to this community. They are opening additional safe zones for low-income people, providing electricity, water, and safe space. Small initiatives, but for many people, that is the only part of the system that still works for people. And perhaps, in that adversity, they are teaching America a simple lesson: that sometimes communities are not built with brick walls and mortgages, but with people who still choose to share, even when they have nothing left to lose. Is this just a temporary, community, or an image of America's future, where people without homes still try to rebuild a home with kindness and memories. During the 1950s, cars symbolized middle-class freedom. Then in 2025, it became their own last residence again. According to a report by the Urban Institute, the number of people living in vehicles increased by 23% in just 3 years, and experts warn that this trend will increase before reaching a stable threshold. As housing, gas, and food costs continue to escalate, hundreds of thousands of people are entering a hovering state, not completely homeless, but also no longer with home. Many cities are still struggling to find ways to respond. Some places like San Diego and Seattle are testing safe parking zones models, which are licensed areas for people to live in the car overnight with basic security and support. But waiting lists are long, funding is precarious, and needs cannot be met. In the opposite direction, places like Oakland opted for quick tackle to clear more than 1,000 RVs from the streets in just 2 years. The two approaches differ, but both reflect a common truth. America does not yet know what to do with its own citizens. A sociology expert from Pew Research commented that this phenomenon is not just a housing crisis, but a crisis of America's identity. Because the country that once boasted home of freedom is now facing a mobile civilization, where people move constantly, not because of dreams, but because of compulsions. As the roads become inhabited, the concept of home, what was once the thread that unites the whole nation, is gradually disintegrating. There is an ironic paradox. America once defined success by owning, but now millions of people try to learn to survive with less. And in that quest for survival, a new America is forming, less stable, less trusting, but also more humane in a quiet way. On makeshift parking lots, former strangers share food, tools, and even the little hope that this may have a place to return. Is this just a phase? Or is the new form of the country that once called itself middle-class paradise? And if the American dream is now just a zero-stop journey, who would dare say we're still moving forward? Perhaps the scariest thing is not that hundreds of thousands of Americans are living in RVs, but that the whole society is gradually treating it as normal. A country that once boasted of being a place where everyone had the opportunity to build their future now makes the people who built it flee from their past. If house is no longer where you live, but just where you are allowed to stop, then whose homeland is America? Perhaps what hurts people the most is not the loss of their roof, but the feeling of being forgotten, when the whole country seems to be used to seeing people living in cars without feeling insecure. If you've ever seen a similar scene where you live, or someone you know is going through this, share your story. Every account is part of the big picture, a reminder that behind the glamour, America is still carrying deep cracks, and sometimes only by listening can we begin to heal. Don't forget to click like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel to join us in continuing to explore the hidden corners of American dream, where neon lights and shadows are blending together, and where every little story contributes to keep that belief alive. The content in this video is compiled from reputable news and reporting sources such as NBC News, KUTV, Pew Research, Urban Institute, and other independent research organizations. All information presented for the purpose of discovery, analysis, shares a social perspective, is not absolutely affirmative, politically prejudiced, or offensive to any individual or organization. Some details, characters, and narratives are narrated or reproduced based on actual reportage material to illustrate social trends, not representing the entire population or any specific group. Audiences are encouraged to learn, collate, and form their own personal opinions based on a variety of information sources. The author and the production team are not liable for actions or interpretations made based on the content of the video.